I bring my salad and my baked fish to a party, I'm the weird one, but they're eating pasta and bread and cookies, and I'm the weird one, right? I mean, those are poisons. Those are killing people. Those are not what the body runs on. It's kind of like if you're going to put diesel in a car that needs regular fuel, it's not going to run well. So we have in the Western world this tragedy. Thank goodness that we're doing this today and all of you are watching. How many deaths are happening is not in the headlines. How many inflammatory diseases that sugar is directly, increasing is not in the headlines. Trillions of dollars spent on the health complications caused by this accepted and normal diet. There's a complete disconnect in the fact that how the majority of the Western world is eating is killing them.
Hello and welcome back to the Sugar-Free Summit for our second of our three-part summit. And in today's session, we're going to be putting a spotlight on diabetes. And we are joined by our special guest, Dr. David Unwin, Dr. Jody Stanislaw, and the president of the Complementary Medicine Association, Jayney Goddard. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and we hope you enjoy today's session.
ZUKR, deliciously guilt-free.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this Sugar-Free Summit. My name is Jayney Goddard, and I am so excited today to be able to have a couple of the world's leading experts in this field talking to us today about the importance and relevance of removing refined sugars from our diet. I'm joined by Dr. David Unwin and also Dr. Jody Stanislaw. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us. David, could I start with you? Would you please introduce yourself and then I'll come to Jody also for an introduction and then we can kick off proceedings.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. So I'm an oldish GP from the north of Liverpool. I've looked after the same population of 9,500 patients since 1980. I'm passionate, in fact, obsessed with helping people who suffer with type 2 diabetes improve their quality of life. And as part of that, we're very interested in our practice in achieving type 2 diabetes remission, that is drug-free type 2 diabetes remission for our patients. And we've now got 20% of the entire diabetes register in the practice into remission. And because of this, we're saving £68,000 per year on the diabetes drug budget alone. We're using a low carbohydrate diet to do this. And I would say in every clinic I run, I'm seeing people who are delighted, who are self-caring, and in fact they don't need doctors and they don't need medication, and it's wonderful, wonderful, cheerful medicine, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Thank you.
David, thank you so much. That's absolutely fantastic and so exciting. I can't wait to hear more about it. And Jody, could you please introduce yourself to the audience and let us know what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Jody Stanislaw, and I myself have had type 1 diabetes since I was 7. So I have been on a lifelong journey of, being aware of sugar and where it hides in the obvious and not so obvious places. And I actually have created a virtual consulting practice where I help type 1s anywhere in the world and really help them understand the importance of their diet and how to dose their insulin properly so they can have healthy blood sugar levels. So I also did a TEDx talk a few years ago that is called Sugar is Not a Treat. And I'm thrilled to report that over 4 million people have watched this video. And I basically explain the mechanism of what's going on in the body when people eat sugar, the mechanism behind type 2 diabetes, and the mechanism behind, not the mechanism, but then the results of, when we eat too much sugar, what happens to the inside the body, and then what people experience on the outside, which is basically intense, dramatic, and tragic. So I'm very passionate about educating people from the root level of how this is affecting your body and thus how it's affecting your life. And why I'm so passionate about this is, as I said, I've had to manage and monitor my sugar intake my whole life. So it's something that's been on my radar my whole life, which has given me the benefit of helping all of you that maybe don't have type 1, who have had the luxury of not having to focus so much, but yet, it's not a luxury because it's killing millions of people. And I also point out that the ripple effect impacts every single person in the world. When we don't feel good, when we eat sugar. I'm already on my soapbox of why I'm so passionate, but I'm going outside of my bio, so I'll stop there.
Jody, that's absolutely no problem at all. Absolutely fantastic. And it is, it's wonderful actually that everybody is so passionate about this topic because it's such a crucially important topic. So just so for the viewers, my name is Jayney Goddard and I'm a child of a type 1 diabetic. So I grew up, with a good understanding of what blood glucose means and insulin and how it works. The real inside track. I have to say that it's very interesting listening to you both. I look after type 1s and type 2s and various other gestational diabetes and so on because I run retreats, and so I come at this as well. And what I think is so interesting from what you've both said so far, and it's the same in my experience as well, and that is that we have the commitment to educate the people that we work with. And this, I think, is a crucial thing. And how we come to this education and the way that we get that and we get the results that we do is different in each of our cases somewhat. So let me throw it back to you, David, first. Can you tell us a little bit about the way that you work with your patients and how do you get over this need to educate, given that you're a very busy GP? How does all of that work?
I think the critical thing is motivating people and interesting them. And I believe that once you start hoping or wanting a better life medically, then you're starting to think about action. So I'm very excited by the idea of drug-free type 2 diabetes remission, because I think it's a beacon of hope for many people who previously hadn't thought that they could potentially do without medication. I think for many years, I was trapped into the idea that type 2 diabetes was a chronic deteriorating condition, and that my expectation and the expectation of my patients was that I would medicate them more and that their condition would deteriorate. And so I think my second message of hope, as well as the idea of remission, is that actually, if you start really considering where the sugar is coming from in your diet, given that that's what puts up blood sugar and gives poor diabetic control, it's not all about remission. Many of my patients have stabilized their condition for years. They've lost weight. And actually, it's not just about diabetes of either type. It's about, are you well? How do you feel? And I think another motivating thing is the idea that your skin condition could improve, that your hair might improve. Lots of people are delighted to lose. My average patient is losing 10 kilos. So that's the average weight loss. And the biggest weight loss I've had is 12.5 stone. That's life-changing. So I've got lots of hope, I think, that I start with my patients. And then even a 10-minute appointment, giving hope is time well spent, because it hooks people into, well, this sounds interesting. Now tell me how you do it. So that if I begin by telling you, you must give up sugar for the rest of your life and probably bread and breakfast cereals, you're going to say, I want another doctor. If I first of all explain that you may well do without medication, you'd probably feel better, look better, and live longer, then giving up sugar and bread suddenly seems something, well, I'll at least give it a chance. So that my first hint is try and adopt a collaborative approach so that doctor and patient work together, particularly if they have shared goals. I find having shared goals with patients is exciting, because then we're working together. And so very early on, I'm trying to find a shared goal with the person that's with me, because then off we go, fewer problems.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, David. And Jody, what's your approach? How do you work with everybody that you look after?
Well, like I said, everybody that I work with has type 1 diabetes, and we always look at blood sugars from the beginning. And then I bring up what I call meds. What are your meds? And meds is an acronym for mindset, exercise, diet, and sleep. So before I even get into helping them improve their blood sugar levels, I always like to educate. So I start with the education piece and explain that these core meds, these 4 areas, diet obviously being a big part of the conversation, are the most powerful meds in getting good sleep, having regular exercise, eating a healthy diet, and lowering stress, right? Those are the most powerful medicines in the world. So I spend a lot of time on educating them why the body will thrive when we're eating food that came from nature, right? When we eat whole foods. I think it's a tragedy that the majority of shopping markets, I'm assuming the UK is the same, but also in the US, are products that aren't nutrient dense, that don't encourage health and wellness, and actually do the opposite. And they're called food. Frosted Flakes, bagels, chips, cookies, all the sodas that people drink. And it's a tragedy because if I bring my salad and my baked, fish to a party, I'm the weird one, but they're eating pasta and bread and cookies, and I'm the weird one, right? I mean, those are poisons. Those are killing people. Those are not what the body runs on. It's kind of like if you're going to put diesel in a car that needs regular fuel, it's not going to run well, is it? So we have in the Western world this tragedy that's so silent, frankly. Thank goodness that we're doing this today and all of you are watching, but it's not in the headlines. It's not how many deaths are happening is not in the headlines. How many inflammatory diseases that sugar is directly increasing is not in the headlines. Trillions of dollars spent on the health complications caused by this accepted and normal diet. There's a complete disconnect in the fact that how the majority of the Western world is eating is killing them. So this topic has got to be talked about more, which I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Jody. That's absolutely fantastic. And just from my perspective as well for the viewers, so I work with both type 1 and type 2 diabetics and various other people with autoimmune illnesses. I have the luxury of doing this usually on health retreats, but also when patients and clients come to see me on a one-to-one basis. And it's very interesting because the common denominator, although we all have slightly different approaches, my approach is a whole food plant-based diet, free of added refined salt, oil, and sugar. But what we all have in common is that we have this commitment to education, explaining, I think, to our clients and our patients that there is hope, as David so eloquently put it. And I know that's what you're giving people, Jody, as well. So yeah, it's really intriguing to me to see that that's something that we're all doing, and to see that a lot of doctors, a lot of health practitioners out there aren't necessarily giving that information, that there are answers. Where, if you're type 2, yes, you can reduce your meds, get off your meds entirely, get into remission and so on, or dare I use the C word, could there be a cure for type 2 potentially? Many people say yes, there is. Obviously type 1, very, very different situation, but we can avoid the sequelae of those. So for example, my mum diagnosed back in the 1970s, now 82 years old and in remarkable good health, with none of the sequelae that you would expect to see in a type 1 diabetic diagnosed that length of time ago, when they didn't have blood sugar monitoring equipment and things like that. So it does go to show that lifestyle plays a massive role, doesn't it? Yeah. So yes. Anyway, Jody, can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on, obviously you touched there on the massive sort of overdosing of refined sugar, and I know obviously David you'll want to come in on that, but what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I'm aware, David. I am sensing he has a passion to say. You have your hand up, David.
Yes, it was just, I hadn't quite finished with education because I felt there was something we hadn't discussed that my patients feel really they're interested in. And I find it really useful to explain to people about the hormone insulin because they mainly don't know what it does.
Right.
And so I think the first thing is that the body's very sensitive to a raised blood sugar. And so God in his wisdom gave us insulin produced by the pancreas gland. Insulin's job is to rapidly get rid of that dangerous sugar out of the bloodstream. And it's an interesting thing to question what happens to that sugar that was in the bloodstream. And what insulin does, it could be seen as pushing sugar out of the bloodstream and into cells where it does less damage. But then we have the question of, if I eat more Mars bars than I need to run around, what's happening to that sugar? And actually, we know that insulin is pushing sugar into your belly, which it gives us the middle-age spread that I used to have. But unfortunately, it's also pushing it into the liver. And that is why now a quarter of the entire of the developed world has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. A quarter of everybody we know, probably more in America, Jody, I would think. But it's certainly a quarter of my patients. So people's liver, the sugar is pushed into your liver. And the fat in the liver interferes with the work of insulin. So you become less sensitive to insulin. And this can happen to type 1s and type 2s. So that your insulin doesn't work as well. And that's the beginning of developing type 2 diabetes, where you become resistant to the good work of insulin. But unfortunately, your pancreas fills with fat as well. This is the work of Professor Roy Taylor in Newcastle. And then your ability to produce insulin diminishes. And this is partly how the mechanism by which type 2 and also, though, to an extent, type 1s, their diabetic control can deteriorate over time. I always like to finish with a message of hope, and that is, we know that if your liver empties of that fat, which can be achieved by having far less sugar, the whole thing, that is the basis of reversing type 2 diabetes, the emptying of the liver of fat. And Roy Taylor in Newcastle has shown this many times by scanning the liver before and after, and it can empty of fat actually in weeks. And for a final point of interest, it's seen very rapidly in bariatric surgery, so that there are different ways to do this, but that's how bariatric surgery reverses diabetes, because the liver cheers up. And I find that item of education that Jody was talking about is key to helping people understand why giving up sugar might be a good idea. It isn't just about the immediate blood sugar. It's also about the fat in the liver, because then if you can get rid of that, your health is really starting to improve. Thank you.
I would say absolutely. I think also it may well be worth bringing the concept of chronic inflammation into the mix as well, because again, what I find with a lot of people I work with is that they have no idea of the way that chronic inflammation develops and the fact that it underpins pretty much all of the chronic diseases that we possibly wrongly associate or assume are a natural part of the aging process. And I was wondering if either of you have any thoughts about that at all.
I'll underscore that if you want to extend your life and feel good, you've got to fuel the body properly. I don't like to complicate it, but the body's not meant to eat these foods that people are eating. It's just not meant to. And so there's going to be a problem, just like my analogy, if you put diesel in a regular car, you're going to have problems. If you put the wrong fuel in the body, it's not rocket science. All of these processed, refined foods are not what the body is meant to run on. It has become, this society is just pushed by these corporate conglomerates that have made the food industry into a profit-making industry. It's not a health-promoting industry. It's a profit industry. And the pharmaceutical companies are probably right there in bed with the food corporate giants, because they go hand in hand. If you eat this food, you're going to need to take more pills. So I really like to simplify it. If you want a healthy body, you have to feed it with food that is meant for the body.
I'd just like to add, I would just like to add it's not just about diabetes type 1 and type 2. I agree with the inflammation. Week after week, I've got people, well, actually, my personal story is that, I didn't tell you mine, but I used to wake up in the morning with ankles that were so painful, I'd have to stand up on a pillow. And to get down the stairs, this is when I was 55, I'd have to hang on both sides because my ankles were so painful. And I felt that this was, would be inevitably progressive, and that I'd be lucky. What would happen to me when I got older? But for me, that is caused by wheat, I have discovered. And if I stay off wheat, my ankles, my joints are fine. If I cheat, it's like having a policeman, my ankles start throbbing. And again, clinic after clinic and week after week, people are telling me about IBS, bellyache, irritable bowel syndrome improving, joint pains improving, skin improving, psoriasis improving, and an eczema. And so this idea of why are we using anti-inflammatories all the time? Why do we not think about what's the cause of inflammation? I think the other modern disease is not thinking about the cause of illness generally. We just think of what the tablet is. We don't swim upstream and think, why is this person sick? God didn't design us to be sick. What's going on? And for me, the discipline of asking, why is my patient unwell? Because if I don't know the cause, how am I likely to suggest a successful treatment?
It's not how our medical it's not how our medical system, the medical schools, right? They teach the pathology and then they teach the pills.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I think we have the wrong paradigm. We flatter ourselves that we're scientists, but actually for many of my years, I was learning guidelines, doing tests, and then medicating. But what I've discovered now is working with patients and thinking really about why, what is wrong with this patient, why. It's been the greatest experience. I'm loving it because I see people who actually get well. When I used loads of drugs, it was quite rare to see anybody really thank me and look terrific. And now they walk in and they look amazing. What have you done? And they say, well, I followed your advice. Thank you. And that's happening in every clinic. And Jody, I'm sure it is with you.
So I just want to put a little plug in for, first of all, I'm so grateful to hear that is your approach. It is exactly what needs to happen around the world. What is the root cause? And I actually have a 5-year doctorate in naturopathic medicine. I didn't go to a Western medical school. I went to a holistic focused medical school, and only can speak for the doctorates of naturopathic medicine here in the US. I don't know what the training is like outside, but our school was excellent in what is the cause? What is the cause? What is the cause? What is the obstacle here? Why do they have high blood pressure? Why do they have high cholesterol? Why do they have, weight gain? Why do they have migraines? Why do they have chronic fatigue, which is not a disease? It's just a symptom that, that doctors are like, chronic fatigue. You have chronic fatigue. No, what do you have? Why do you have chronic fatigue? Chronic fatigue is not, you can't just stop there. That's not the diagnosis at all. That's a symptom. Well, what's underneath? Why? So our physiology professor was incredible in having us understand, okay, these are the obstacles to cure. What are the obstacles to cure? Well, we're here today talking about one of the major obstacles to cure is diet, right? And my acronym, the real meds are generally where most obstacles to cure are found in chronic diseases. Right? The majority of the diseases that we see today, I think I've seen a stat about 80% of diseases today are chronic diseases, right? Thank goodness we have trauma units and, diagnostic machines that are exceptional. But when it comes to chronic disease, Western medicine doesn't do a good job, right? Because they're not looking at these root causes, which are the meds, mindset, stress, emotional health, connection, community, exercise, moving the body, diet, and sleep. That's where the causes are found in the majority of today's diseases.
I would say I completely agree with you, Jody. It's very interesting that I teach at a lot of medical schools, and the idea is that I go in and I am supposed to be teaching the students, teaching to understand what their options are when it comes to complementary medicine and or integrative medicine. So where to go for the research, what works, what doesn't work in the field, so that when they're faced with patients sitting across the desk or sitting at the side of the desk to them, what can they safely recommend? Where do they go for the research? And what does the research really say? Because of course, again, in med school, a lot of doctors are not actually trained on how to read research papers. A lot of them, as we know from the Lancet statements, a lot of medics will skip to the end and would just read the conclusion without actually reading the methodology and working out if it all stacks up. But what I find is that I'll be rocking up and doing my little spiel about, so this is what state of play is, this is how we get the research, this is where we go for the reliable research. And I'll notice that the faculty are starting to creep in at the back, and they are so interested. And what I'm seeing, and I think this is incredibly positive, and certainly medical schools that I teach out in the UK and also where I have taught in the USA, is that there is an understanding now creeping into the field, into the conventional medical field, that conventional medicine doesn't have all the answers, and that actually, these human beings, these creatures, we require a completely holistic approach in order to be healthy. So Jody, as you were saying, mindset, sleep, stress response management. I never talk about stress management, I talk about stress response management. Teaching people strategies like mindfulness and resilience strategies, both emotionally, physically, and even spiritually, of course. All of these things are so crucial. And I love the way that you are both delivering this by educating people. And I think there's great hope. The thing that gives me hope is that these students are coming in, and as I say, the faculty are creeping in up at the back, and the response afterwards is really positive, and the penny is dropping that we can't just medicate people to get them better. It's just not happening. So yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think from the sound of it, Jody, our background and our training is probably very similar, because my anatomy, physiology and pathology lecturers were the same ones who were teaching the med students at Imperial in London. So yeah, we probably have a very similar background and a very similar approach there as well.
Mhm.
I think what is happening, is that people become healthcare professionals to make a difference. They don't, on the whole, become doctors and nurses to get rich. When you're young, you're full of hope and you want to make a difference. And I think so many doctors now are deeply disappointed, really, with the results. That's how I was. I was ready to retire when I was 55 because I just didn't feel I was making a difference. And doctors are hungry for something that delivers those results so that you can see people who actually look better. And when you see somebody that's getting results, I find, like both of you, they're very interested. The second thing I wanted to add was you both listed all sorts of important things that improve the human condition. And I agree with both your lists. What is it to be human? What do you need? You need companionship and rest and all sorts of things. I would say that I think diet is one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruits at the beginning for many patients, because you can explain it to them in terms of diabetes or weight or whatever. So that exercise, so my average patient weighs 100 kilos and is 63 years old. So for them, exercise, because they're so inflamed and heavy, is just punitive. But if I can get them to improve their diet, on average, they lose 1.5 stones, and then they have more energy because they've got a cleaner system, as Jody was saying, because we've got them on a proper fuel. And now they're saying, what next? So again, I find
Beautiful.
Usually diet first, because it's low-hanging fruit in that they see results reasonably quickly. And then when I've got an activated patient, I'm going to say, right, that's wonderful. What are you going to do next? And they may give up smoking. They often start exercising. That's very common. But there are other things too about sleep, as you both listed. But we are talking about diet today. And for me, diet usually comes first because it's more accessible and it's easier to understand why giving up sugar and starchy carbs might be good. Stress is a harder thing to get across, and it's quite a difficult thing to help somebody sleep better, in my experience.
Yes, it certainly is. Sleep is one of the one of the most, I think it's actually a huge challenge, especially because we are living increasingly in a 24/7, just non-stop, busy, busy, busy society. And there is this, that there is this almost embarrassment about sleeping. If you phone somebody up and catch them napping and say, "Oh, sorry, did I wake you?" "Oh, no, I was awake. And it's this almost an embarrassment, isn't there, about actually taking rest and taking sleep. And it's a very strange thing. And David, I completely agree with you. I love the idea of, nibbling away at the low-hanging fruit. I think that's a beautiful analogy. I absolutely love it. I may steal it with your permission at some point. But yes, it's fantastic. I mean, I'm just wondering if there are any words that you would like to share in closing, as I think we're coming to a natural close. But I was just thinking, from the perspective of our viewers, is there anything that perhaps you both can share with the viewers, things that they might like to start to trial in their own lives, things that they can adopt, little takeaway snippets that might just help somebody watching so that they can get started and then perhaps, jump on board with you and do more exciting things at a later date?
Okay, I'll start, but make sure we leave enough time for Jody. I would say to people, first of all, diet makes a huge difference. We are all a bit different. And I would say, see yourself as a lifelong experiment. Maybe you don't know what suits you, but why don't you find out? I know that if I have bread, my ankles hurt. And I know if I avoid bread, my ankles are pain-free. Well, that was really useful for me. So that given that diet makes a change, wouldn't it be a great investment for everybody to find out which diet suits you? Because it does vary. There is no one correct diet. My wife and I are both very low carb and quite high meat eaters, but our diet is not the same. And we both experimented and had to come to different conclusions. And I think for the audience, I'd say, find out what works and do more of it. Find out what doesn't suit you and be honest and do less of it. Also consider how you're going to get feedback. So feedback is really part of behavior change. So it may be the size of your waist. It may be your weight. With me, I can tell my mental state varies depending on what I eat. Also, something like a Freestyle Libre could measure your blood sugar, and then you really know. I found it very interesting having a glucose monitor on, and I learned a lot of lessons. So these are all part of see yourself as a lifelong experiment and find the diet that suits you. And bear in mind, as you get older, the diet that suits you may change. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you so much. Jody, any final words of wisdom?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was just going to pull up my glucose monitor and see. Let's see. So one of the things I educate people on, of course, is there's a lot of things that can raise blood sugar, not just sugar, right? Like adrenaline or excitement to be a speaker. So at the start of this, I was, let's see, I think I was about 95. So let me convert that 95 divided by 18. I was at 5.2 millimole, but clearly I have adrenaline going on just from, the excitement of our chat. But this is my blood sugar since about midnight last night. And so right now I'm going up, right? But my high alarm I have set at, let's see, what would that be divided by 18? My high alarm is set at 6.7. So the gray is where I try to stay below 6.7. So right now, 134 divided by 18, I'm 7.4. So I'm a little higher, about 1 millimole higher than I like to be. But any patient I work with, I work with type 1s all around the world. I just pray that they can get access to this or the Libre because it's incredible. It's incredible to see everything, that affects you. And, talking about wanting to reduce stress, you can see when stress makes you go high, I've read an email before that was really stressful and I just saw the arrow start going up. So then but it's a great experiment, talking about experimenting, David, about, what diet works best for you. And, a lot of people have false assumptions about, oh, this food's good for me, or this food's bad for me, or, oh, I'm not feeling good, I must have hypoglycemia. And this is a truth teller. This is absolutely a truth teller. So I encourage good. I've mellowed out now. I've flattened out. It's not going to keep going up. I always love it when I see the arrow go. down. So looking into one of those, I do know that there are some companies, I don't know what the process is in the UK of people getting them that aren't on insulin, and that don't have diabetes, but that is a great piece of information. Education is empowerment. We've talked a lot about the importance of, when people watch my TED Talk, hopefully we can put a link to my TED Talk. I really go into, the understanding of how the beta cells work, how insulin works, what happens when you eat, the alarm bells go off, meaning the pancreas has to make all this insulin. So watch that talk, educate yourself on not only what's going on in your body when you eat all these refined sugars, but really start taking note of maybe what your blood sugar is doing and how you feel. Because we all know, as David agreed, and Jayney, you did, is that anybody watching, you might have heard 100 times, stop eating sugar, right? And we need a little bit more motivation than that. So when you're empowered with the educational piece, whether maybe what you've learned today is enough, or if you want to dig deeper, that helps motivation not be such about willpower and, mental stamina to change your diet, right? I was mentioning before we turned on the recording is I had a woman from the UK actually just send me an email last week. And she said, I wasn't even looking to cut sugar out of my diet. The way you explained how sugar works in your talk, I don't even go for it now anymore, right? So empower yourself if you're struggling, and then small baby steps. My diet recommendation is just mostly eat food that comes from nature. If you want to be vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, all of that, I don't really care. Just eat clean, healthy food from nature. And, a great way, one single step to start is a low carb breakfast. Start your day with balanced blood sugar levels. You don't start your day on a sugar spike that ends in an exhaustion roller coaster that then you want to eat more sugar. I mean, if you start your day with cereals and biscuits, you can be doing this energetically, as well as your moods will follow this all day. So have your protein-based breakfast, and that could be the first step you take.
Jody, that's absolutely fantastic. And speaking of baby steps, I think, David, you wanted to say something about children.
I did. Yeah, I'm going to throw a quick broader thing in that's come from my clinical practice. So we were very interested to look at our failures and who were the people struggling. My wife is a consultant clinical psychologist, and we realized they were sugar addicts. So for these people to give up sugar or bread or whatever was really, really difficult. And they, just like alcohol or cigarettes, are very, very similar. And my point really is about children, and it's a plea. If we reward our children with sugary snacks for doing well, if they're given a bun because they did well, or chocolates or sweets because you did well, you're interfering with them psychologically, because think of Pavlov's dogs. And really, we're all buying our grandchildren this, that, and the other sweet things, and we shouldn't. Because in clinical practice, I deal with a lot of 15-year-olds who I'm really struggling to help because they've become carb addicts of one type or another. And they're using energy drinks, they're on sugar all day long, and it's very hard by then to save them. And how sad is that? They're 15 and I'm struggling. And my wife thinks of sugar as a gateway drug. And I think she's probably correct. That's the first thing that you learn. If you're sad, you should have it. If you're happy, you should have it. And I think it's leading to some very serious problems, and something I'd like the viewers to think about, because I'm often told I buy the biscuits for my grandchildren, and I'm saying, so the most important people in your life, the young people in your family, they should have the best nutrition. I'm behind Jody on nutritional density. What's in that food? And so I just felt I couldn't leave it without thinking about children and the idea that we can do better. I finished.
David, I think that is just so potent and so powerful. I really just want to end by thanking you both. I think the viewers will agree with me that we are so privileged to be able to sit and listen to you both. You know, you are the leading experts in this field. And, you know, it really is just something so special. So I want to thank you both for your time. It's been an incredible education. I know that we will be sharing your details, your contact details, and of course also for anybody who wants to look at the way that I work with my clients, I think you can get my details from the summit, you know, from the summit show sheets and so on and so forth. So I just want to say thank you. It has been absolutely fantastic, and I want to obviously thank the summit sponsor as well, ZUKR, because you know they have drawn us all together to create this happening, and I think it probably has inspired an awful lot of people to make some really profound changes in their lives. So thank you both so very much, and thanks to the folks at ZUKR. Thank you so much. All the best.